got a couple of other people that are still coming in. So as they come in, we're going to just admit them. Looks like a good number of people. So we had about 26 registered. We're at 22 now. So I think we'll kind of go ahead and get started. I do want to start us off with a couple of announcements. My name is Susan O'Handley. I'm a co-president for the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. And I'm joined tonight with some other of our board members, co-president Andy Mason. Can you wave, Andy? Andy is going to help as a moderator this evening. Charlie Scheim, who is our treasurer on our board. Rebecca Gretton, who is another of our co-presidents. So we will be monitoring for any questions that might come in throughout the evening. We start off where we'll have everybody muted, but if you have something to share on your control screen for the Zoom controls, you should see a section called reactions, and there's a raise hand function there. So you can raise your hand in that, and we can allow you to unmute at that time and ask a question. You can also use the chat function and make a comment or ask a question in the chat function as well. So raise hand or use the chat function. We'll be monitoring those throughout the program tonight. A little bit about Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. We also go by DOAS, which is our acronym. Our mission is to, sorry, I'm switching screens as I go back and forth as more people arrive. Our mission is to protect our natural environment, connect people with nature to benefit birds and other wildlife through conservation, education, research, and advocacy. One quick announcement that I want to make is about our optics raffle. It's a fundraiser that we're currently have going on. It's a fundraiser to support the Doas Sanctuary and the Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch and some improvements that we're making there. We've got 250 tickets for sale, $10 a piece. And the prizes, the top two prizes are Nikon Monarch binoculars and shoulder straps. There's a Nikon 7 for the first prize, a Nikon 5 for the second prize, and then the third prize is a $50 gift card to Wild Birds Unlimited, who is our corporate sponsor for the fundraiser. We've got less than 175. I think we've sold about 75 tickets, so there's less there at this point. The drawing is going to take place at our April 16th program. So you can find additional information out of our website. I also want to just mention that this evening's program is actually part of our climate action initiative. And if you've been at some of our prior programs, you've heard me say this before, but at some time over the next few weeks, we want to ask you to look at your current household carbon emissions. We have a carbon tracker app on the website, doas.us/carbon tracker. And this is a tool that will help measure where your household is currently, and it will help you guide you towards things you can do to bring your carbon emissions down with a net goal of net zero by 2040. If you need help or guidance, I have time slots on Tuesdays and Thursdays each week. Let me just, so I can help you if you have questions on that. I also want to say, if you're interested in climate change and taking action, to reach out to me, because we are growing an area network and we're looking for people who want to get involved in projects. After this presentation is finished, probably in the next day or so, I'm going to send each of you an invitation to join our Climate Action Network. And this is a place where we can continue discussions, learn from each other, share resources and information, and provide guidance to each other on climate-related projects in our region here and elsewhere. So we have one more program coming up in this series, which is next Tuesday, March 9th at 7 p.m. We're doing green heating and cooling for homes and businesses. with Bennett Sandler, with Heat Smart Mohawk Valley. Pre-registration is required. The information is on our website. So that's it for me for an announcement. I'm going to try to keep it short. I do want to thank you all for coming tonight. I'm really glad that we have such a great turnout for this evening's presentation, and I thank our presenters for their time in kind of coming and volunteering to come and talk to us tonight about electric vehicles and their experiences, as well as like all of you participants. I know some of you have reached out to me separately, and people have things to share. So Tom and Celeste Theis are enthusiastic electric vehicle owners who will never go back to gasoline. Tom is a scientist and engineer and has got a fascination with the technological advances making affordable long-range EVs possible. Celeste is a social worker with not much interest in the tech part, but definitely has input into how much fun these cars are and some of the insights, as an owner. So a little bit more about Tom. During a 38-year career with IBM, Tom made numerous contributions to the development of information technology as a research manager and executive. He is currently with Utopus Insights, pursuing long-term passion, acceleration of technological and societal change to combat global warming. And Celeste is retired from the Ossining Public School System, retired since 2011, and has since worked in as a psychotherapist in private practice, and has long been a political activist for progressive causes. So thank you both for joining us this evening. I am turning the mic over to you. Please feel free to add anything I may have missed about yourselves.
I think that was a very flattering introduction, and you certainly didn't miss anything. Thank you very much, Susan. So Celeste, why don't you start? Who are you? Say a little bit more about yourself. Well,
Susan did a great job.
So why do we have how did we end up with 2 electric vehicles? How did that happen?
All right.
Tell them about the Prius, though. Start with that.
Yeah. So in 2008, I bought a Prius. I think I traded in a Dodge Caravan. The kids had grown up a bit, and we didn't need to be schlepping tons of soccer equipment around. So we went from the big van to a Prius, and the Prius was great. It was fun driving around, and it's a hybrid, so it switches from battery to gasoline engine, and it was fun to see how much mileage how many miles per gallon I could push it to by playing around with the speed and so forth. And I think I had that car for about 9 years. And then I decided to get a Prius Prime. I think they came out with the Prime around that time, maybe a year or two before. And the Prime is a plug-in hybrid. So you just plug it into the outlet in your garage or wherever. Doesn't require any upgrade in electrical equipment. And I got about 25 miles on a charge. So the first 25 miles I drove with that car were on, just electricity, and then it would switch over to the hybrid mode. So that was kind of fun too, because, the car gave you feedback on what your average miles per gallon were. So it was something like, 100 in most cases.
I think you were even higher than that on average.
Yeah. But again,
as long as you take short trips, right?
Yeah.
That's the gasoline mileage. Of course, it's not clocking how much your electric bill is going up because you're charging the car. But it turns out that's almost negligible. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah. And then around the time that I bought the Prime, Tom got wind that Tesla was going to come out with an affordable car. And so you could, we decided to put down a deposit. What was it, $1,000 or something?
Like
and we thought, this may not even happen. Worst case scenario, we get our deposit back. And, if this car actually comes to be, then that's great. So I had the Prius Prime for about 1.5 years. And then we got notified from Tesla to come and pick out our car. So I ended up trading in the Prime, getting the Tesla. This is a Model 3, which did cost more than we thought it would, but there were, you know, tax rebates and credits and things. So, I mean, it turned out to be okay. And, you know, so I've had that car. That was a 2018. So I've had it for a couple of years, and it's great. It's really fun to drive. And after kind of putting along in a Prius, which I was perfectly happy to do. I'm not a speed demon. And, you know, I would, when getting on a highway, I would give myself plenty of time. But with the Tesla, and you just step on the accelerator and it boom, takes off. So even though that's not something that, you know, I wouldn't choose a car based on that.
It is fun.
It is fun. And it, you know, it really does have a lot of pep and handles really well. So, but in the meantime, Tom was driving a 2008 Toyota RAV4. And we thought, you know, we need to keep the RAV4 because we need a gasoline engine car. And also when we, you know, take trips, we have 2 dogs, you know, we need room for the dogs. When Tom goes to Home Depot or wherever and buys plywood or rocks or mulch or something, you know, we need a car with a large cargo area. But then Tesla came out with the Model Y, which is the crossover. And
your sister needed
a
car.
different car, right? Anyway, we gave my sister the RAV4. We got the Model Y, and it's great. It has all the room that we need and then some. But you know, let me just back up a little bit. When we first got the 3, one of the things we were concerned about is, what about taking long trips? How does this work? And I think the first long trip we took, we drove up to northern Vermont to visit some friends. How long a trip was that?
It was a 600-mile round trip. And
So yeah,
in the middle of winter.
right.
And the Vermont mountains were absolutely deep in snow. The last 20 miles we traveled, there was no pavement. It was all just
packed snow.
Packed snow.
Yeah.
And our friend said, you won't be able to get up our driveway. And the car went right up the driveway. In fact, the only time I heard it slip on that whole trip is a 4-wheel drive, and it's got instantaneous, you know, control of the torque on each of the wheels independently. And the only time I heard it slip was going up his driveway, and it just went, boop, threw up a little bit of snow that hit the wheel well, and that was the only time I heard any slippage the whole trip.
Mm-hmm. So what we figured out is, you know, one of the nice things about that car is that when you're planning a trip, you know, there's a screen in the car. Everything is on the screen. There's no real dashboard with instruments on it, which takes some getting used to. But, you know, you plot in where you're going to go, like a regular navigation system, and it shows you where all the chargers are along the route to your destination. So we stopped, I don't know, maybe about halfway.
Had lunch.
We plugged in the car, went and had lunch, and by the time we were done, we were ready to go. And then we did the same thing on the way back. So on a long trip, you know, we would normally make a stop anyway to go to the bathroom or get something to eat or let the dogs out for a little, you know, stretch their legs. So what we found is that whenever we've gone anywhere, to Vermont, we've been to Pennsylvania, we've taken it to Nantucket a few times, that it's never been a problem where we had to worry about, you know, what if we run out of juice?
There's no range anxiety.
Is
the word that people use. In fact, I love the fact that I don't have any of the range anxiety I used to have with the gasoline vehicles, worried about running out of gas when I was late for an appointment and the tank was low, because when you leave your house in the morning, anytime you want, you just plug it in you know, when you get home that night, you plug it in, it charges while you're asleep, say 2 a.m., whatever time you set to start the charging. And it's like you wake up and it's like you got a full tank of gas, except you never had to go to the damn gas station and pump gas.
So once we figured out that we didn't have to have range anxiety with the Model 3, we decided to give up the RAV4 and go with the Tesla Model Y, which is larger, has more cargo room. And so we haven't been to a gas station.
Well, I did.
Well,
I got a gallon of gas
for the snowblower.
For my snowblower.
Right. But that was
can't
it.
buy a good electric snowblower yet, at least not one big enough for our
Yeah.
driveway.
So that's how we ended up with 2 electric cars.
Yeah. So I would just, the only thing that was great, Celeste. The only thing I would add to it is that at the end of that 600-mile trip, I knew that we didn't, just to echo what Celeste said, I knew we did not need a gasoline vehicle for long trips, because you can look at, in fact, Susan, you have a map of the national network. I think it's out of date. But it shows that you can go on any highway with these. You can go coast to coast. You can go to southern Canada. You can go to Mexico. You could drive down to Mexico City. There are charging stations all along the way. Yeah, that's the national map. It doesn't show. It does show Canada. Yeah, it shows Mexico. That looks like it's up to date.
Yep, this is the map, and I will just want to thank one of our attendees tonight for sharing that. Stosh, where are you? There you are.
Yeah.
We just connected like over the last day or so with some great information locally, and I'm sure that you will be a great resource to continue to help provide some information. So thank you. We appreciate your input and participation, and definitely looking forward to kind of where this can go. I'm going to go ahead and stop share and go back to you.
No, keep it a second. Keep a second, please. So let me speak to this a little bit. There's a little bit more here than meets the eye. So what you see at the top in the red is the locations of Tesla highway fast chargers, superchargers. And as I said, you can go from coast to coast, both in Canada and multiple routes across the country, and never be, never have to worry about how you get from one point to the next. The route, the one below it, the DC fast chargers, DCFCs, that's the Electrify America network. Now, if you buy a vehicle other than Tesla, you would have to use a network like this. And as you can see, it's more sparse. There are, though, several other networks. The good thing about Electrify America is these are fast chargers. That is, you can charge your car. You can add 100 miles in 15 or 20 minutes, like you can with the Tesla, of 100 miles of range. And there are other networks, but they don't have as many fast chargers. This is rapidly improving, but for anyone that expects to use the vehicle on interstate trips, long trips, Tesla is simply the superior choice right now. Tesla drivers can access these other networks. They don't bother. It's much more convenient to use the proprietary Tesla network. There's some talk about, if other car companies want to allow their customers to join the Tesla network, that's fine, but Tesla spent all the money to put those up, and so the other car companies are going to have to pay something to support the Tesla network. So far that hasn't happened, although actually there is some motion in that direction. But also the other networks are opening up to Tesla drivers. And in fact, almost all of the other networks are available to Tesla drivers. So it does remain a big plus for Tesla. In fact, it's the biggest plus for Tesla. It's the biggest consideration in terms of favoring Tesla. I could say negative things about Tesla, that the range that's advertised is not always, or not, the range that's given by the EPA is not always as, the other vehicles can match it, even if their EPA rating is lower. It's a more conservative rating than the Tesla rating, which sort of pushes the bounds of the EPA tests. So I wouldn't buy a Tesla just because they all have much greater EPA range. They do have much greater EPA range than other vehicles, but a lot of that isn't real. And you don't need it anyway once you get up to 250 and 300 miles. But and everybody's good car has at least 250 miles of range now. But this question of interstate travel, convenient interstate travel without having to think about it ahead of time, Tesla is really the way to go. So that's the only advertisement I'm going to give to Tesla today.
Thank you, Tom. I do want to interject here quickly. I learned today about one of the charging stations that's just opened in Oneonta, in the Oneonta area down at Southside. Stosh, would you mind sharing just the information about that piece? Like what is that? Is it a supercharging station? It's open for any vehicle, et cetera? Just very briefly here, and then we'll go back to Tom.
Yeah. Well, it's a DCFC, direct current fast charger. It is got several different types of adapters that you could use to charge almost any electric vehicle out there if you have the right adapter. I've heard that it charges from anywhere from 50 kilowatts per hour to 350. So it also depends on your car, what percentage is at, what can take it. So it can charge, it's almost like a Tesla supercharger, but sometimes with maybe the bolts and the new Konas that are coming out, it could charge even faster. So it just came up probably like a week ago.
Right.
Nice. Thank you, because I was not aware of that. I had been speaking with one of the sales reps from Mirabito, which is a local fuel oil corporation here. We had been talking about biodiesel and how, the process of mixing and how that impacts carbon. And they had mentioned to me that they're actually they're helping to get some of those charging stations in place, which I thought was a really nice thing, especially for our local communities, that they're a company, they've been involved in biodiesel for at least 15 years at this point that I know of, maybe even longer than that. They would love to see more biodiesels being implemented, as to kind of shift that carbon out. But their investment in electric infrastructure, I thought, was very interesting and potentially very telling.
Yeah, as I said, and what I think this whole conversation supports is that this whole situation is changing very rapidly. Tesla is rapidly expanding this network. The other networks are expanding. I want to just share one thing here. So this is relevant to the question of charging availability. So what we have here is a map of your area centered roughly around, I guess, Oneonta there. And what you see is that there are a fair number of supercharger stations, and I'm sure you're familiar with the distances here, but any one of these stations that are shown on this map is an easy drive from another. Now, remember, if you're starting from home, you are never going to use a supercharger if you're within a round trip distance, if you're driving within a round trip distance that the vehicle can do of your home. You're going to charge at home. You're going to leave your garage, your parking spot, wherever you live, you're going to leave with a full battery charge. You're going to have whatever range the vehicle has on that battery charge. So these chargers, these red charging stations, these are highway fast chargers. The rate for the technical cognoscenti is up to 250 kilowatts, which is fast. The new networks, like the ones we just looked at, some of them have some stations that go even higher, up to 350 kilowatts, although there are very few cars right now that can make use of that. But again, this is improving. But what you'll see here is there's only a couple of those on this map, right? There's just not many, there's not as many of them around. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, I only put the ones that are 150 to 350 kilowatts on the map. Now, there are many other chargers, these ones in blue, but they're slower. Those are 50 kilowatts, and I wouldn't try not to stop at a station that only has 50 kilowatt chargers. Those are kind of old, they're kind of out of date, and they're going to take much, much longer to charge your car.
What about the black ones?
And the black ones I should have mentioned, that's something that is, I don't know if that's unique to Tesla, but these are called Tesla, all these black ones are Tesla destination chargers. These are charging locations that are not, they're called level 2. That means they take a couple hours to charge your car. They're like this, they're the same as the charger that you would have installed in your garage if you get a battery electric vehicle of any type. And those are when you go to that hotel, they may offer free charging overnight, and if you're in a pinch, we found that we've never used one, but we've never had a need to use one, but we have done just inquiries to verify that in fact they don't mind if you just use them even if you're just passing by and not staying at the hotel. Typically, I mean, it depends on the hotel or the destination, but there's a lot more to say about this. There are a couple of apps that you can download on your phone that will tell you where all of these chargers are for any of these networks. For all of them, you can put in your vehicle and it will tell you. You can put in what adapters you have for different networks, and it will filter the selection so you could see where they are, and it'll plot a trip for you. It's not hard once you get into it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that.
Tom, could I ask a question here?
Sure.
How much does it cost to charge your car at one of these stations?
So Tesla has to make enough money to run them. They can't just give it to you for free. So they charge slightly above the actual rate of the electricity. So to give you some numbers, for Celeste's Model 3, she put 20,000 miles on it in the first year before COVID-19. She was driving a lot. We have records that tell us how much was actually spent on the car. It was $872 for 20,000 miles for home charging, electric bill. That's roughly 21 cents a kilowatt hour. For I don't know, all the trips we made, how many long trips did we charge? Remember these,
like 4 or 5.
Yeah, 4, and maybe even more. But if you're taking a 300-mile round trip, you might only add 50 miles of range to get back home. So the biggest bill I can remember on any trip was that Vermont trip. I think we might have gone up to $12 for one charging session. We like almost completely filled it up filled the battery. We estimated less than $75 for the highway charging for that year. And then why don't you tell them about the rebate, Smart Charge New York?
Oh, well, all right. Well, this isn't going to help you guys, but
it might.
We found out if you live in the area where Con Edison is your electric supplier, which is mainly, New York City and Westchester. So Con Ed hooked up with a company called Fleet Karma, and they have this program, Smart Charge New York. So if you sign up for this program, they send you a little gizmo. What is it? A C2 something or other that you plug into the
a monitor.
Yeah, it's a monitor,
a
little thing that you plug into the diagnostic system of your car, and it keeps track, or it communicates with Con Edison whenever you charge your car at home. And the point is, they want you to charge your car during the off-peak hours. So with my car, for example, I just set it up so it charges at midnight or 3 in the morning or something. And so they give you credits for that. And then every month I get a rebate. And, you know, I was looking, it's on average, what did we say, like $60 a month?
We can get up to $500 a year rebate, and that's what we figure we got for that year when Celeste did 20,000 miles. So we spent about $900 on electric bills, both highway charging and at-home charging, and then got a rebate of $500. So it was $400. It would have cost us $1,200 to drive a Prius that far.
Yeah.
So it's very, very inexpensive.
This is Andy. I've got one question that came in asking, where do you go for service?
Oh, so here's the, all right, so this is fun. So, so when I picked up the car, when we first bought the car at the dealer, you go to pick it up at the dealership. And before we left to drive home, I said, so when do I need to bring it in for service? Because, you know, mostly when you buy a new car, they want you to bring it in after a couple of months. Or so the guy says, well, come back in about a year. So I brought it back to the Tesla dealer a year later, and they rotated the tires, changed out the windshield wiper blades, and I guess checked like brake fluid and the windshield washer fluid.
They were all fine.
And that was it. So it cost, I don't know, that first time, I think that they charged me like $170 or something. But I did find out that the garage where I used to bring my cars for repair and service, they'll do it also. So there's not a lot of work. I mean, there is no oil changes, no tune-ups. I mean, even when I had the car inspected, you know, so the New York State inspection is $10 because instead of $30, because there's no emissions test. Anyway, so to answer your question, I could have it charged. There is I could have it serviced. There's a Tesla dealer, you know, less than 15 minutes from where we live. So they'll service the car once a year, or I could bring it.
If you ask them to.
If I ask them to, right?
Yeah.
They don't keep on you. They don't say, it's time to come in for service. There's no little light that, you know, shows up on your dashboard to tell you it's time for service.
So there's nothing like the oil system in a gasoline vehicle that requires service in that kind of urgent way.
Yeah.
The motor, I'll just jump in from the technical side. The motors in these vehicles are tested to 1 million miles, you know, accelerated testing. They don't wear out. The batteries are lasting hundreds of thousands of driver miles in practice. They're warranted to 125,000, but the only people that have seen them fail, well, that's with 75% of the, you know, only 25% loss of capacity. That's a big loss in capacity. I wouldn't be happy with that, but that's not what happens. It might degrade the capacity. You might lose a few percent in the first couple of years, and then it gets slower and slower. They're going hundreds of thousands of miles. These are the Model S's, the oldest batteries, the oldest technology that Tesla has. Every car is connected to the internet, you know, to Tesla. So they have the data. They know how these batteries are lasting, and they publish this data. And they last hundreds of thousands of miles with very minimal loss, maybe 10% loss of battery capacity on average at 200,000 miles. So the cars, from that point of view, the drivetrain of the cars, the battery and the electric motors, they just don't wear out. Not on the time scale we're used to thinking of for wearing out a car. And there aren't that many moving parts besides those things. So, and this is a general statement about electric vehicles. A well-designed and a lot of new electric vehicles entering the market are going to be just as well designed and have the same kind of reliability. So that's not a Tesla statement.
Tom, I think another one of our members had a question. Eileen Klein, I noticed you had your hand up. Do you have a question? If you do, you can hold down your space bar and talk. We're not hearing you at all, Eileen. If you hold down your space bar, that will unmute you.
Well, we do have another question about the batteries, which is what happens to the batteries when the car, quote unquote, retires. I guess that's how are they disposed of, I would imagine.
Sure, and that's a great question. But first, the simple fact is that right now, the batteries haven't been, or the cars haven't been around long enough that recycling of batteries has been a meaningful, that wear out of the batteries has been a meaningful thing. In fact, if a car right now is in an accident and the battery hasn't been physically, it'd take a really bad accident to physically damage the battery. But if the car's been in an accident, and even if the car's totaled, if the battery is good, it will be salvaged. It will be bought by hobbyists who are using these batteries and buying motors that are available on the market to convert gasoline vehicles to electric vehicles. I have a cousin that does this. So, there just isn't right now much need to recycle the batteries. Nevertheless, there's a very big need to recycle all the electronic batteries from your computer, your phone, and so forth that are not being properly recycled. And so there are two big startup companies. J.B. Straubel, who is a former executive at Tesla, started a company called Redwood Materials. And there's a company called Li-Cycle, which is, I believe, a Canadian company, but they are, with some incentives from New York State, they are opening a very big recycling center, lithium-ion battery recycling center in Syracuse, outside of Syracuse, New York. So absolutely, the recycling companies are ready. They already have agreements with the manufacturers of the various electric vehicles to recycle the batteries. They're just not getting many yet.
Another question on maintenance, the brakes. Is there any difference with an electric vehicle?
Yeah, the brakes never wear out. It's just one of those things that doesn't happen. And the reason that is that the vehicle has regenerative braking. An electric motor, if you run it forwards, it drives the car. If you run it backwards, it takes energy from the car and puts it back into the battery, and that slows the car down. So that's regenerative braking. If you can set the car, and every electric vehicle has this, not just, again, this is not a Tesla advertisement. Every electric vehicle has regenerative braking. So you can actually pick how strong you want that to be. I love single pedal driving. So the regenerative braking is set at the strongest setting, which means, as long as I don't, as long as I start to slow down a reasonable time before a traffic light or before behind the person that's stopping in front of me, whatever, I never have to use the brake. And even if I use, so the brake's there for sudden stops, and those are emergency stops, and those are rare. So the brakes last essentially forever.
So in other words, once you take your foot off the accelerator, the car slows down almost to a stop. I mean, and again, you can set it. There's a setting that you can, adjust for how quickly you want that to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, and another question on the charging
Before
stations.
you go,
Oh,
Andy,
yeah.
Eileen is now unmuted, so I think she
Okay.
wanted to ask something. Then we'll go back to you. I know there's a bunch of questions in chat.
Oh, okay. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Forgot my question. You start your car with your cell phone, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. The cell phone unlocks the car.
But
It
you have to
unlocks
have
the
the
car.
cell phone. All right. So the cell phone, I mean, for the Tesla anyway, I don't know about the other cars, but you set up the Tesla app on your phone. And so your phone functions as the key. That's what gets you into the car. And then also you need to have the phone in the car or the car won't start. They do give you
Card key.
a card key. It's a thing that looks like a credit card. So if you were leaving your car with a valet, for example, you wouldn't have to hand over your phone. You give him this little credit card thing and he puts it on the console and then the car will start. But I stopped carrying keys around. I don't need keys anymore.
Yeah, I go leave my house without my keys because I just don't need them for anything.
And any computer issues in regards to function?
So it is possible for the car, there's a computer that, every car has computers that are involved with things like, in a gasoline car, they'd be involved with ignition timing and so forth. Those are special types of computers that are essentially foolproof, or all cars would have problems. The Tesla is built the same way. The car, the electronics that's responsible for moving the car, controlling the battery power to the motors and the regenerative braking and so on. That I've never even heard of anyone having a problem with that. I suppose it could happen, but I've never heard of it. The screen that has all the menus that you can use to set different things, and also provides the navigation display, and it's also the radio and the streaming internet and the podcast, whatever you want to listen to, on your phone or from or directly from the cellular connection that the car has. That can do the same thing as a phone might do every now and then. It could sort of freeze up. It takes about 30 seconds to reboot. You press two buttons on the steering wheel. It's just like turning your phone off and turning it on again because it got into a funny state.
All right, back to Andy. I know there's a bunch more to go through. So
yeah,
this is great.
Someone's asking about the charging stations. How many stations are there at each site? As more people buy Teslas, will there be a waiting line at the chargers?
So there have been waiting lines on holidays in California where 11% of all vehicle sales are currently Teslas right now. So, and what's happened is Tesla's been very smart about, well, they've done several things. They're rolling out faster chargers, the ones that go up to 250 kilowatts. They do have, if a place starts to get crowded, they have it now set up so that it'll give you, on your phone or on the car's screen, it'll tell you, if your car's finished charging, if it reaches the charge set point that you have set, don't come back after 5 minutes. We're going to start to charge you a penalty, not a huge penalty, but something that'll annoy you and make you come back and move the car so the next person can get there. So they've done that kind of thing. But basically what they're doing is just building more of these, and they're building them very rapidly now because, they're making money and they can afford it now. And again, the other networks are also expanding at a fairly fast pace now. I would like to see some incentives to make that go faster, but I don't think it's going to be a big problem.
When we've stopped on the road to charge the car, it'll tell you, at this charging station, there are 8 chargers or 12 chargers or whatever the number is, and they'll tell you how many of them are occupied. So before you get there whether or not there's a free charger,
right,
an available charger.
And some of the non-Tesla networks are either have that as well or are going in that direction. So you can, if you have the choice, you could go to the place that, go down the road another 30 miles and go to the place that's less crowded. But I suppose there could be situations where you'd have to wait in line. We just never have. We've just never had that experience on any of our trips.
Oh, that would be a good problem to have, because that would mean
yeah.
people are really switching. Yeah,
I agree with that sentiment.
Right.
There's a question: is it protected from salt damage? I guess that means the car itself, the body.
Yeah.
I think it's as good as, I think modern automobiles are actually generally pretty good. That's a question of metallurgy more than anything, and I think it's as good as any other. There's no, if you're talking about is the battery susceptible or something like that, no, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, and here's, I think, a comment. Someone's saying that Latham, New York is the nearest Tesla service to here. They also make house calls for certain service issues.
Yeah, they do.
So let me explain a little bit. That is good and that is true, but that's still a long drive from where you probably are, right?
Yeah, I would say, well, over an hour to Latham.
Yeah, right. And some of you could probably also make it to our place in Westchester, in Mount Kisco, New York, where we get ours done. But here's the problem. Because New York has old laws on the books, the sort of, let's call them legacy automobile dealers, the dealers that deal with gasoline vehicles, you know, Ford, GM, VW, whatever, Mercedes, they have used those old laws to prevent Tesla from setting up new showrooms and service centers in other parts of New York. The ones that are in New York right now, there's one in Western New York, there's the one you mentioned in Latham, there's a couple around New York City, I think. Well, I know there's a couple around New York City. Those are grandfathered in. Before these laws started, before people discovered these laws were on the books and decided to get them enforced for anti-competitive, for call it anti-competitive or competitive reasons, but depending on which side you're on. There is a bill before the New York State Legislature, Susan just mentioned it before this meeting, to change the law. The law should be changed so that Tesla, Rivian, that's starting to manufacture electric trucks, Lucid, which is going to be manufacturing luxury vehicles they say are going to beat Mercedes luxury vehicles. Those electric vehicle manufacturers will be allowed to sell, where they want in New York. And I think that's a good thing. Companies like, it's a very complex situation. Like companies like Ford and GM are actually forcing their dealers to either become more supportive of the electric vehicle revolution, or in the case of GM, they said, if you don't want to be a dealer of our new Cadillac Lyric, it's going to be an electric vehicle. You might have seen it advertised in the Super Bowl. If you're not interested, then we'll buy you out, but you won't be a Cadillac dealer anymore. And I think like 800, nearly a quarter of their national dealers opted out.
But why would a dealer opt out of that?
Because some people don't want to be part of the future. I don't know. Huh. I mean, they had to invest to stay in. They had to set up chargers. They had to train people and so forth. And they just decided they didn't believe it. They didn't believe it's really coming. They decided not to do that.
Hmm. And one last question: how does your insurance cost compare?
Same.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at that and it was really kind of hard to tell because it had been so long since the last car and the rates go up anyway. So, but I don't think it's, much more expensive than any more expensive than if you bought any other new car in the same, price range.
Right, and the prices of the electric vehicles are dropping quite rapidly, actually.
Okay, that's it for now for questions. Yeah.
All right. Well, those are all terrific questions. I have a few more remarks that I can make, and then maybe that'll generate a few more questions, or maybe we'll wrap it up. How about that? How much time do we have, Susan? Only 10 minutes, I see. So maybe we should just wrap it up.
Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes. And then I know, I would like to, we do have some electric car owners in our participant list tonight. So it would be great to, like, once we hit that 10-minute mark and any final questions, just to open it up briefly for people to share some of their experiences as well.
Well, that's fine with me if you want to do that now.
Oh, would anybody like to do that now? Or If so, wave or do something so that we can.
Kathleen Hayek has her hand up.
Okay.
So Kathleen,
I saw
unmute
Stash
yourself and ask your
Yeah.
question.
I saw Stash Rusin also raise his
Also.
hand.
Okay, so Stash, why don't you go first and then we'll go to Kathleen.
Thanks. So I have a Tesla Model 3 standard range. It's actually the lowest range out of any of the Teslas and only gets around 220 miles. In the winter, it's far less than that, but I haven't found an inconvenience at all to drive anywhere. My wife and I drove up to New Hampshire and back through Vermont, back roads, hiking, everything. On the way there was supercharging stations right there. We plugged it in a regular 110 volt outlet at the houses we stayed at.
Yeah.
It's been a fun car. I mean, in the winter, my range is a little limited and I go hiking down in the Catskills, but there are slow charging stations there. So when I'm done hiking, I'll go charge up for maybe like a half an hour and have my lunch or something like that. And, other than that, I've had a great time learning about this. I've had it for about a year now, 13,000 miles. The one thing I've had to do was rotate my tires.
Yeah, right.
And I live right in Oneonta too. So it's been a blast. We've also driven down, we're going actually down a trip down to Virginia and doing the Skyline Drive.
Oh,
That's gonna be fun.
yeah.
But I've had such a blast with this thing, and I actually have the option for it to drive itself. So it's actually very, very different, sketchy, but it's very, very fun at times, and it's very relaxing. And just like Tom said, you drive for so long, and then all of a sudden you got to take a pee break, and these stations are right there, and they're right next to gas stations. Half an hour later, you're fully charged again, and you're back on the road. I mean, we went down to South Carolina in our Prius once, and I recorded it. It took 19 hours, and recorded it with the Tesla. It took a little bit over 19 hours.
That's interesting.
Beautiful. Kathleen, why don't you open your mic and we'll switch over to you.
Hi, I'm a Nissan Leaf owner of less than a year. We bought it back in June. We actually leased it for 3 years from the Nissan dealer in Oneonta. I have not taken it on a super long trip. I've gone to Roxbury and back from Walton. From Walton in Delaware County. I probably not all from Delaware County. We have a Tesla adapter as part of our arsenal of chargers, so that we can use a Tesla supercharger if we desire.
I have a question about that because that's a little bit new to me. I can understand that you could use it at a like a destination charger, but can you go to a supercharging station?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
That's brand new.
That's great to know.
I think I bought the only Nissan Leaf sold in the year 2020.
I gotta learn more about the availability of adapters and access to the supercharger network. I've never seen a non-Tesla at any of those, so
Yeah.
I gotta learn more about
There's an adapter. It came with the car. We didn't have to pay extra for it or anything. It just came with the car.
Kathleen,
I gotta learn more about that.
do you have to pay Tesla when you charge at one of their stations?
I wouldn't know. I've never used it. So, getting an electric car during COVID is not a fun experience because I don't really get to go
You can't use it.
show it off to anybody because, but I've totally enjoyed driving it. It's like I liken it to being on a sailboat. It's a whole different feel. And the pickup is amazing. It's wonderful. And it glides. It's
quiet.
a different feel. And I was laughing at you when you were saying you had to keep a gas car. with your electric car, we're at the gas car stage because both of our cars broke down at the same time. I mean, like within a week of each other during COVID, and in June. And my husband bought a Forester, and I leased the Nissan. And with all the rebates available, the Nissan costs the same thing as a mid-range Forester.
Mhm.
So he's got the Forester for his hauling and going to the dump, and he can mess that one up.
Right.
And then mine's the nice go visit neighbors kind of car. But yeah,
I'll
it's a cruising
interject
car.
here just briefly because I've been researching electric cars for purchase, and I'm subscribed to all the apps to help me find cars in my area and things like that. And one of my searches came up today with several Toyota Priuses, and they were 2018 Priuses, about 15,000 miles on them, and they were selling for about $22,000. So I went to the Toyota website and I looked for the 2021 model, which our dealer in Oneonta currently has rebates or deals currently going on, like for certain models on their lot. And one of them had a $4,500 off discount on select vehicles and an extra $1,000 cash back. And then I looked up the rebate site on New York State Drive Clean, and they offered an $1,100 tax rebate on the state level and another $4,000 tax rebate on the federal level.
Mhm.
So that new 2021 right off the lot Toyota Prius would cost in the end something like $19,000 as opposed to the $20,000 used car with 15,000 miles on it,
Yeah.
and a 3-year-old vehicle. So those things are out there. My understanding is the used cars do sell fairly quickly. COVID has changed the used car market. So used cars are actually now, I think, a little bit more expensive. You end up paying more than you typically would have for a used car. I'm not quite sure kind of why, but I just figured I would share that. I will share that link to the New York State Drive Clean information on the resources that we'll post when we follow up from tonight. So we did record this evening. I will post a recording of the webinar. Please feel free to share it. I'll include additional resources from Tom and Celeste. I'll include some of those links that I'm aware of. And basically, I know one of the things that kind of came across today as a concept around the Earth Day type of focus is possibly to see if we can get an electric car show here in our area where people can come with their electric cars and talk to owners and share information, kind of look at the cars, like in person in reality and what people's experiences are. Has anybody who own one of these vehicles, have you had any issues? Like, is there anybody that, can see? Okay, Ramona's raising her hand there. Ramona, can you unmute and just mention what your experience is?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We got our Model Y back in June, and a few months in, we got a warning that it has a second battery. It has a 12-volt battery, which runs like lights and things like that. We did get a warning that we had about 3 weeks to have that changed out. And at first I was concerned, and I called right away. Everything is through an app. You order the car through the Tesla app, and you can communicate through the app mostly. And so I did make an appointment. They came to the house, switched it out. It was under warranty, and it was resolved quickly. And so I was pleased about that. And there were some alignment issues. The back hatch was out of alignment, but they took care of everything very professionally. I have, I'm very happy. We're very happy with the car overall, but those were the main issues.
So just to add a little bit more to that, the 12 volt, every Tesla has a 12 volt lead acid standard auto battery. That's the absolute, I think that runs the, like a lot of electronics in the car that operate at low voltage. It's also the absolute backup if the big battery in the bottom of the car that drives it, if that were to die. That it is a problem because, as you know, lead acid batteries only last 5 or 6 years, and then you have to replace them when they die. And it sounds like you had definitely had a bad battery, and that's why they, of course, replaced it under warranty. But it is a point of failure of the cars. It does, as in your case, that you get a warning that it needs to be replaced. And the good thing is that they are going to replace it with a lithium ion battery, a 12 volt battery, I guess, or maybe they're going a little higher voltage. But the point is that will have a life that's similar to the lithium ion battery that drives the car. So they're going to remove that point of maintenance and possible failure. That will be for those that buy the car a year or two from now, I guess. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Andy, I know we have a couple more questions that came in the chat. Do you want to go through those? Then we'll come back to see if anybody else would like to share.
Someone was asking, I'd like to know how Mpge is calculated. Is there a default ratio used for city versus highway miles? It seems like these are based on a typical suburban dweller running errands all on the battery with occasional long trips. We have the exact opposite situation. Most of our miles are highway.
So since Susan can you see, I'm sharing now, I hope, right?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay, I have to just get I prepared that fact because that frequently asked question because Susan was nice enough to send it to me. That was from Jim Smalls, if I'm saying the name correctly.
Yes.
So there's this question, and the answer, this is actually a hard question. What does Mpge mean? You see Mpge listed on the car sticker when you look at the new car. And this is set up by the EPA, and it's to give people an idea how much energy the car is using. So the way it's calculated is actually pretty simple. You take the EPA estimated range of the vehicle, like in our car, it would be roughly 300 miles. And then you divide that by the energy that the battery can hold, but you convert that electrical energy into the energy in equivalent gallons of gasoline. So 300 miles, in this case, divided by 2.2 gallons would equal 135 miles per gallon equivalent. And all this is telling you is that these cars are very, very energy efficient. But what's astonishing is that the car will go 300 miles on the energy equivalent in the battery of just 2.2 gallons of gasoline. How is that possible? It's possible because the motor is much more efficient. The electric motor is much more efficient in converting the energy in the battery into forward motion than a gasoline engine. A gasoline engine, most of the energy in the gasoline just goes out the tailpipe as heat and noise. So this also tells you why the range of an electric vehicle will go down in the winter and also in a hot summer day, because you're putting on the air conditioning to cool the cabin, or you're heating it. And the car is so efficient that just that energy that's being used to heat the cabin is adding a significant amount to the drain on the battery. So the range will actually go down. On the coldest day of winter, I've seen it drop 30–40% from what you'd get on a nice day in in spring or summer or fall. Where am I going with this? Don't pay too much attention to this. It doesn't tell you much. What's more important, in my opinion, is what is the EPA estimated range of the vehicle? We find that that's a pretty good estimate of how far we can actually drive the car at 65 miles an hour on the highway. But this EPA range isn't just highway, it's an average under very carefully specified conditions of highway and city driving conditions. So you average the two under a formula that EPA has got. And then they take the data they get from a professional driver driving the car on a test stand in a laboratory. And then they use a formula that converts that to the mileage that you're likely to see. So you have to take the whole thing as a grain of salt. If you drive that Tesla and have the fun of accelerating onto the expressway every time you come to a lane to get in, and to leave the Nissan Leaf, same thing. If you drive it fast or accelerate hard, the mileage is going to go down. The miles you get on the battery charge is going to go down. But if you're just driving normally and keeping relatively constant highway speeds, we find that the EPA range that has been assigned to these Tesla vehicles is a pretty good predictor of the highway range in moderate weather conditions. So I would pay attention to that number. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And here's one. Yeah, this one's an odd question, I think, but it says maybe real. Are the door handles flush? Has anyone had problems with frozen door handles?
No, actually, the first time they had those handles and there was a big winter storm in the country, there were people on Twitter and YouTube saying, just take your fist and bang it. It's not made out of paper mache. It'll the ice will break, and so no, there's been no real problems with that I'm aware of. Certainly, we've never had a problem. But in all fairness, I must say our car is usually in the garage during an icy storm. So,
would anybody else like to share?
You mentioned that your Tesla is a four-wheel drive. Is that common for electric vehicles in general?
It's common, but I think it means that there's a front motor for the front two wheels and a rear motor for the rear two wheels. The motors are so small compared to a gasoline engine that you don't even know where they are. And if you look in the trunk in the back or there's a trunk in the front. You lift up the hood. It's called a frunk, right? A front trunk. And you can throw a small suitcase in there or some groceries or whatever, but there's no engine there. There's no motor to see because it's down in the wheel, down with the wheels are, where the wheels are. So the less expensive vehicles, the vehicles you can get brand new, very, very competent electric vehicles. There's a Ford Mustang Mach-E that's coming out. It's with the federal and the state rebate would be down in the low 30s. There are cars from Kia and Hyundai that I'm and especially some new ones coming out.
Volkswagen.
Oh yes, the Volkswagen ID.4. Don't ask me why it's called that. ID.4. Very competent, very well designed sport utility vehicle. It's got a little more of a square back than the Tesla Model Y, but it's a pretty vehicle. It's getting great reviews. And that one you'll be able to get in a rear wheel drive version in the US. You can order it right now, I'm pretty sure. That one is going to be well below 30 after the rebates, and some of these are going to get into the high 20s and these are brand new cars, extremely nice cars. Oh, the new redesigned Chevy Bolt, and they're bringing out a Chevy, what do they call it? I'm sorry, I don't have the
weird
name. But it's they've made it a little 6 inches longer. They've squared off the back, so it's more of a conventional sport utility vehicle. Again, a medium-sized or really a compact sport utility vehicle. Everybody's happy. They haven't improved the range. They haven't improved the battery, but it's got 259-mile EPA range, and it's that one's going to be in the low 20s with the rebates. So, oh, wait a minute. Take that back. Unfortunately, General Motors, so Chevy, and Tesla are the two companies that have already sold 500,000 vehicles in the United States. So vehicles from neither of those companies are eligible for the federal rebate, which is too bad because those are good cars at their price points. And I do hope that there is legislation before Congress that should level the playing field. I don't think we should give a particular advantage to Volkswagen, Hyundai, and Kia, and so on to import their or sell their vehicles here with the federal rebate just because they've been slower than these other companies that have led the way. So I hope that happens, but who knows? But okay, so it's complicated. It's an evolving situation.
So I have a question from someone who basically wants to know about test driving. Can you test drive a Tesla?
Yes, sign up on the web and they'll give you an appointment and then you go, and they probably, because of COVID, I'm pretty sure they make it touchless. That is, they'll give you a car that's been cleaned, disinfected, and you don't have to see or talk to another person. You'll just get in and drive it away basically and take it out. Now,
but they have to teach you how to drive.
well, they'll give you some. Actually, they give a video that plays on the car's screen, and actually it's pretty simple. But yeah, they'll give you that instruction.
When we got the Model 3, we go and pick it up at the dealership, and we had been there a long time because I guess there were a lot of people who ordered them, and then a bunch all came in at once. So it was at night. We were kind of tired. We get the car. They show us how things work, and we drive off, and we go to a diner to get something to eat. And it occurred to me that I don't know how to turn the car off. So, because there's no key, there's not even a power button. You just put your foot on the brake. And so basically what you do to turn it off is you put it in park and you get out of the car. That's it.
And it locks itself.
And it locks itself.
Wow. One of the things that I've heard that's like one of the big differences is the noise, like how like that first couple of times getting used to that vehicle is that there's no noise and it's so quiet, and how hard it is when you end up in a gas fueled vehicle, how much you notice how loud that is.
Yeah.
Yes, that's any electric vehicle, and I hate the smell of exhaust now. I just can't stand it.
No. Well, I think there's a lot of potential for a lot of good change environmentally with this.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to seeing some of these changes, which just feel so vast and fast. Everything in this whole area of technology is just like every 3 months it seems there's like new stuff about electric vehicles and the technology. Anything that anybody would like to add before we end for tonight?
I have a question, Tom. Could you just talk about like the difference in carbon footprint between a gas vehicle and an electric vehicle, including like what about the carbon footprint of generating the electricity to begin with?
right? So there are, again, I have a backup slide which we'll post after the meeting. I have a lot of backup material with a lot of information about that sort of thing for those that care to dig in deeper. But the net is, there were early studies, sometimes funded by fossil fuel companies, which made the claim that because the grid that's charging the vehicle is run on fossil fuels, and because the factories that are constructing the vehicles and, for instance, making the batteries, the cells and so forth, are run on electricity, are run on electricity that's generated by fossil fuels. And, some industrial processes do require high heat and are generally fossil fuel burning processes now. All of that, steel making, aluminum making, those all require burning fossil fuel. So put all that together and compare the total life cycle from birth to death of a gasoline vehicle and an electric vehicle. Some of those studies said the electric vehicle could actually be less green. Those studies have been very, very thoroughly refuted. They make very fundamental mistakes. Mistakes like not taking into account the fact that the electricity grid is already much cleaner than it was just a few years ago, and it's rapidly cleaning up. Not taking into account the fact that the manufacturers themselves have focused on using clean sources of energy in their manufacturing processes and so forth. Again, I can give you references to published academic literature, but the net is, if you buy an electric vehicle, the first year and a half, you might be, and say drive it in New York, the first year and a half, you might be sort of behind the ball compared to, let's say, a plug-in hybrid. But after that, you're greener. And if you buy an electric vehicle next year, the grid's going to be greener. The amount of energy used to build that vehicle is going to be less. And the payback time in terms of reducing your carbon footprint is going to be less. And the other thing to remember is the best thing to do would be for all of us to never get a new car. But after, in terms of, not incurring that carbon cost of manufacturing, you could eliminate that if we never bought a new vehicle. But of course, then we wouldn't have any vehicles after a certain number of years because they'd all wear out. But the best thing to remember is just make sure that your old vehicle goes to a good use. Make sure that, you trade it in so that someone else who can't afford a new vehicle can use yours till its end of life. Because once it's manufactured, it's actually a good idea to use it to end of life. But if you're going to buy a used vehicle yourself, consider an electric vehicle. That's better.
Kathleen Hayek, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say our Nissan Leaf is almost entirely made out of recycled materials.
Is that right?
Yeah, almost entirely. It's plastic. It's wonderful. So that was a big selling point for me because I'm buying something that I can recycle. It's been recycled that I can recycle. So
that's great.
I like it.
And hopefully the steel and aluminum that's in the car will also be recycled.
Yeah,
right. And the batteries will be recycled.
Yeah.
One more question came in here. What about the resource extraction cost for manufacturing batteries? I guess that means the mining of the metals, the materials,
right?
That sort of thing.
So it's a complex question. Again, I think it is important that as the volume of electric vehicle manufacturing continues to grow rapidly, doubling every year and a half, that recycling will become a big part of that total picture and limit the total mining. The biggest problem is the metals like nickel and cobalt. Again, the vehicle manufacturers are pushing hard to get the cobalt out of the batteries, and that is happening. There are already automobiles that have batteries that by Tesla, and I assume others will follow, that have no cobalt. Why is cobalt a problem? More because it tends to be mined in areas, well, I'm forgetting the right term, but it can be a conflict metal. Conflict areas, child labor, mined in the Congo, money going to warlords. That is a big problem with cobalt in general. The electric vehicle makers insist on, verified supply chains to try to avoid that. But their real solution is to get the cobalt out of the batteries. I don't think any of these things are going to be in permanent shortage, and I don't think the volumes are going to be significant compared to what, if you look at environmental impact from mining, it would be a good question to ask, what's the environmental impact from oil and gas, oil drilling and gas drilling and fracking, and compare that. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers, but I'm pretty sure that you would happily go to an electric grid running off wind and solar and some mining for metals for batteries.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your expertise with us. I will be posting the resources on the website in the next day or so. I usually ask for people, just give me like 2 or 3 days to get everything processed and up online. It might be sooner than that, but you'll get a follow-up email. As I mentioned, I'll send that out and let you know. And I'll also invite you to our climate network, our climate action network. And if you're someone who has experience and expertise that you can help share some of that or answer questions that people might have on different topics, it's a place that I am hoping will have engagement just between people who can share their knowledge. I think that's one of the biggest resources that we have untapped and available in all of our communities. So thank you all again on the participant end for coming, and thank you, Tom and Celeste. We really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you. Good night.
Night, everybody.